Shepherding Chaos, the Retail 247 podcast. Embracing change in the world of retail tech.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Shepherding Chaos. This is the first edition of 2023 and we're really pleased to welcome Cathy McCabe from Proximity. Hi Cathy. Last time I saw you, you were singing karaoke in a bar off Times Square in New York.
Yeah, it's that NRF time, isn't it?
It is.
Very good timing.
Exactly. Martin, always a pleasure.
Indeed,
never a chore.
Always is.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk about customer service, which is obviously the fundamental point of retailing. Without good customer service, everything else is completely irrelevant. I'm sure we'd all agree on that. But we're going to talk about customer service, what it means, and actually the part that technology can play in actually enhancing customer service, especially in a physical sense. So, Cathy, do you want to tell us a bit about Proximity before we start?
Yeah, I guess, I'll give you a quick elevator pitch on Proximity and what we do. Very much focused around this kind of retail super app that joins up all of those experiences across the board, customer service, in-store, physical retail, digital retail. So again, it was really born out of clienteling and sort of luxury premium brands are very well versed in clienteling and how you can really connect and engage with a customer and really make them, give them an extraordinary experience. Now I think it's a lot broader because you've got all these different ways of connecting with a customer, and what we've been looking at is how we can bring that together into a single solution that is then fed lots of data, product data, transactional data, customer data, so that you can really serve the customer in an amazing and extraordinary way. But technology enables that and is pretty much invisible to the customer, but it's really enabling that service level.
So you're enabling or empowering the person in the, I hate the word empowering, I don't know why I use that, but I used it, it's in there. We work in technology, We have a habit of doing these things. But you're enabling the person in the store to actually have a lot more product information, a lot more product knowledge about the product that they're selling, but also about the dimensions, so whether it's in stock, when it can be available, to make them the person that the customer feels really they are providing an added value.
And I think, as Cathy says, it's the sort of multiple touch points and the I was going to say the frequency of change of those touch points and the fact that you need to keep, somebody somewhere needs to keep abreast of what the customer actually wants to communicate via. So the different apps that materialise for a retailer to keep on track and have that technology interface is quite burdensome for them. It's down to somebody to provide that sort of service.
Yeah, I think typically that often we in today's world, the customer often has more information to hand than the store associate or the call centre agent that's trying to serve the customer. And it's about persisting that information across all of those channels so that the customer really does feel that they're getting, they're not having to repeat things like, multiple times or, it's really important because otherwise, you lose the customer along the way.
Yeah. I think you mentioned at the beginning that it was sort of traditionally in luxury retail. Do you see this going down to be more mainstream now?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, 100%. We have a really broad mix of customers now, from mainstream high street retail all the way through to luxury brands and global.
Is there a level that wouldn't be applicable, do you think?
I guess there would be, yeah. I mean, I think, we're still seeing how that, ultimately the key is that brands, regardless of, whether you're a luxury brand or a high street mainstream brand, you still need to know who your customer is. And unless you're capturing that customer and that customer data, then you don't know who that customer is. So it's about changing the use cases, but being able to do that.
Yeah, I suppose the level of data you're capturing and how you use that data will vary. I mean, will Primark ever get to that world, for example?
I'd like to think that Primark could do a lot more in terms of engaging with the customer than they do, but obviously their mindset is very much it's high throughput, and it's kind of being able to serve the customer really quickly. I'm standing there with a basket full of items, and I just want to get through the queue as quickly as possible. Capturing data at that point would probably, increase that waiting time, which wouldn't be very customer friendly.
So how much data do you actually, what sort of data do you capture about the customer? So if I went into the store, what do you actually, how would can Could you talk me through how the interaction would work?
Typically it depends on what the brand wants to do, but you can capture, minimal data and then follow up to capture more data. But you would be capturing name, email address, mobile number, etc. The minimal that you would need to do to then make a follow up sort of relevant, etc. And then you can add to that if you're actually then trying to find out more about the customer.
So if I'd been if I'd been a previous customer, a returning customer, you'd already know.
Yes,
this,
ideally you'd already have that information. I could pull up your profile, I could see what you've purchased previously, where you'd purchased, how you've purchased, online, in store, all of that kind of normal that you would have as a 360 customer profile. One of the key elements is that even if you take store today, 80% of that customer base is probably not a purchasing customer. They walk in the door and you're not capturing that. So if you only capture just a small percentage of those people that come in and maybe don't purchase, and you can follow on, then there's a huge opportunity there to drive revenue.
So you mean that they're footfall, but they're not converted footfall?
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Because that's a big.
And
that's
why
a big
weren't
issue,
they? I suppose is also the question.
Yeah. I mean,
we talked about this before.
We have. I mean,
sales is not actually a very good measure if you look at it in isolation.
But it's conversion is the key point, because when footfall's down, people say footfall's down by 50%. Well, if you could increase
the weather.
But if you could increase conversion by 50%, then actually the fact that there are less people is counteracted by the fact you're selling more to them.
I think there's been just a slight aside. There's also been a change in attitude to these things. I think when I've dabbled in this area, not directly in the clienteling world, but we've talked about the desire for retailers to capture customer details over the years, and there's always perceived to be a reticence from the public to give that information. But I think watching my kids grow up, if they see a reason for it, they're quite happy to share these days. Yeah. And there's why wouldn't I? Is the attitude sort of thing.
Yeah, you've got to make it.
Have you seen that change?
No, 100%. I think because the problem is often people say, well, how can I have your email address? And it's like, well,
why?
What are you going to do with it? And if you give that email address, and then I'm immediately in 3 emails a day hitting my, it's just not, that's not where we are today. There's got to be a value exchange there. If you do follow up, if you have even if you enable a very sort of basic follow up, then that there's a value exchange there if you can make that personal rather than just based into a
personal is a good word. I think I'm trying to just as me, and I'm probably not a typical shopper, but if it's obviously automated, that often is a big turn off.
Absolutely, that's where you want to try and take a view of doing a non-automated follow-up and then understanding how that can then so if I've come in and I'm looking for something in particular and you don't have it in my size but I'm still keen on that item but what you need to do is then be able to follow up and say, look, we can get that for you, or it's the basics of good customer service, which is what this is about. But it's missing so much. The basics are missing so much.
They are. I mean, if you remove the technology to one side for a moment, then go back into the sort of 80s, 90s where technologies and the early 2000s where this type of technology just wasn't available. But the level of customer service, when you went into a store, you actually went into a store for a purpose. You went in because you could actually get some help from somebody. Yeah. Nowadays, not in stores necessarily with the technology, but it's such a blank.
Hit and miss at best, yeah.
Well, I did a bit of Christmas shopping around this last year. I did all my Christmas shopping online. Yeah, mainly because we're obviously coming out of the COVID thing, but also I was a bit pinched for time. This year I had a bit more time, so I went into shops, and I have to say I left after spending my whole career working retail. I left bitterly disappointed, thinking next year I'm going back to online, because you just thought there was just no
value other than spending a lot of time queuing and
going back to the point you made at the beginning, Cathy, about the customers are sometimes in a better position to know more about the product than the person working in the store. I was literally walking around one particular store with my phone looking for a product. So I said to, do you have this in this particular size? And the person said, well, no, I don't think so. I looked online, and I said, well, you've got it online. And so, well, you're probably best to go and buy it online then. Thinking, well, what's the point of having a store? You might as well just be online.
Is that solvable, though?
Well, I think it is solvable if we could get back to, and we this is a returning theme for us, but if we could get back to retailers valuing customer service. Now, they all pay lip service to valuing customer service because they all say the customer's king. But actually, when you look at the investment they make in providing that customer service, it's not always as good as it should be. And in this country, apart from, and I seem to repeat this every podcast, but
that's why I love you, Alan.
Thank you. Yeah. Always consistent. Yeah, never interesting, but always consistent. Unless you're working in a top quality restaurant, customer service isn't deemed to be a profession, is it? For somebody working in a shop,
it's often a transition job these days. Yes.
But it's got to improve because otherwise shops will lose their relevance.
It's a whole different podcast, isn't it?
We do.
The whole, like retail.
Job or career.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for agreeing to come back for the next one. Anyway, that's really good of you. We tend to do this to people. We've got Matt Bradley coming back. We did the same to him, but that was about dancing.
But I mean, that's all about, if you start your career off in retail, it's still not necessarily seen as a valuable career. Yeah, it is, and the diversity, look at, we all started, but I started off on the shop floor in Woolworths and WH Smith. So, literally it's a hugely valuable career.
Nobody sits at school and university, aspiring to join the retail industry.
When you joined WH Smiths, then I'm assuming you were trained in customer service techniques and selling techniques. I worked for Foster's. Selling and customer service were. I mean, literally, it was a little bit like. I was going to say it was a bit like Grace Brothers. It was a bit more like Suits You, Sir, from the Fast Show, to be honest. But but you were trained in these things, and you weren't necessarily allowed to interact with the customer.
So why did you leave?
Why did I leave? It was
why wasn't it then a career for you if you got all that training?
Well, that's a very good point. You now hoisted me by my own petards. Thank you. I think because going back to your point, I didn't sit there thinking I want to work in a shop. I mean, I started working on a management training program and spent time working in the stores, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and then I got rotated on to work in various areas.
Right, okay.
And ended up working in IT because it paid better. But
if we go back to your point that you said before, you were in the store before Christmas, you're trying to buy some product, you're trying to buy something, but you're not really, when you've said, oh, have we got this, I'm looking for this, or we don't have that in stock, and you're like, but you do have it. Well, let me get it I can get it for you online. All right, let me, do you want it delivered to home? Is it a gift that you want to deliver, to a different address? Can you come in and pick it up? So it's that kind of being able to turn that sort of problem or challenge, rather than just saying, oh, well, just go and buy it online. It's actually then being able to
guarantee that conversion, isn't it? It's about closing the deal.
Yeah, and that's where we have to make that's where technology can make it easier. Having the right technology there, but also the right training. So in terms of to make it, do you need to incentivize that? Do you not need to incentivize it? How do you create the right kind of sort of ethos behind, that why that's important, because you're serving the customer and helping that customer to try and find that product wherever it might happen to be. So I think that's where, putting the knowledge, the information, giving the information to the team, the store teams, the associates is really key, but also then training them on why you don't want to walk out the door and then go and buy something else from somebody else, because you've got a customer there in front of you that is looking for a product. Yeah. And then how do you, help them to buy that product?
You've got the hard work, you've done the hard work, they're in the store, then fulfill the promise.
And still, if you look at, typically conversion is anywhere between 14, 15 and 20%. Post-COVID, conversion was higher because actually you were making a visit to a store. You were taking the time out to make a visit to a store. So you had more purpose, more intention to actually buy something. If you couldn't, if you didn't want to buy that product online. People still like to buy from stores. They still like to touch and feel. They still like to try something on if it's an apparel item. They still like that service element of gift, from a gifting perspective, to get some confidence that they're buying the right thing for a loved one or a friend. So I think there's an awful lot there around the physical store and how important it still is to retail and continues to be important. That's why we're still seeing more stores opening now than we were seeing before. But it is, it's all about customer service, and it's all about that person, that human touch that can that can make a sale or lose a sale, basically.
If we just pivot back to sort of technology, obviously as you know, as Retail 247, we pitch around the back end and the basics of retailing, and knowing how much stock you have, knowing about the product information. Do you see that as an issue across some retailers, that actually the foundational data needed to enable the stuff you do is a challenge, or are they all getting better?
Well, no, I think there's still lots of room for improvement, despite technology being seen as an enabler. There are still lots of foundational elements that are not in place, because you've got to kind of join all the dots together.
Yeah, I've said before, it's quite depressing after 35 years. We're still making a pitch of get the stock in the right place, and then how much have you got?
Yeah. I mean, single view of stock, single view of customer are basics. That really it's the plumbing and the heating, isn't it, that you need to have in place? That really, if you're not investing in that, even your digital channels, your digital channels are going to be woeful. Your physical channels will be woeful if you're not actually investing in those.
Yeah, that's how technology doesn't make a bad retailer a good retailer. It will make a good retailer a better retailer, more efficient and so forth.
Yeah.
And what did retail do before the spreadsheet has filmed me? I think every retailer we talk to, that we need more than two hands to count the number of spreadsheets they use for any given activity.
The biggest transition in retail technology has been people moving from Lotus 123 to Excel. That's the only one. Yeah. But your analogy about the heating and plumbing is absolutely right. I mean, it doesn't matter how fancy the front end is. Yeah, in a way, it looks. It's worse if you haven't got the back end right. Then actually having no front end is probably better than actually having a front end that doesn't work.
Yeah, because you're not over-promising.
No, there's nothing more irritating than being told to go over to customer services, and you stand in line, you get to customer services, and they've got a really nice looking latest screen there, and the screen gives you information that even the information you're given by the person is conflicting, and the person doesn't understand the information they're being given, and you just walk away.
I think I've heard you rant about this retailer before.
Yeah, one day
we'll name them all. When we retire,
that's right. Yeah. The day before we retire, we'll name and shame them all. But
it's frustrating for the store associate though, as well, or the customer service agent, if the information that they're getting is not. There's no, if the integrity of that information is also questionable, then it doesn't help them to do their jobs well, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? So it's not that it isn't complex, because there is an element of complexity, but it should be, in today's age, it should be easier than we're having lots of struggles than because of there's lots of legacy roadblocks that become challenges, and and I think it's about retailers really understanding that getting it right is a huge differentiator, and it's also a huge revenue driver. 100.
I think retailers have got to actually learn to live with legacy, because we've again, another topic we continually come back to is you can't always say the same thing. So if you've got a problem with stock, you can't say we need a new supply chain system. So because how many times? I mean, how many new supply chain systems have you implemented? I mean, it's amazing, because you're always trying to treat the same problem. You never really get to the answer. I mean, it is more complicated now because there are more channels to market,
and you spend a lot of money doing so, a lot of time, money, and effort.
Well,
it's a scary prospect.
I mean, there's the capital cost of doing it, or even the increased revenue cost, but it's a lost opportunity, because these things, I know we're implementing technology a lot quicker than we used to, but it still takes time.
Yeah. It's the same challenge for us. So you obviously single view of stock, and is a pain point that you're trying to you can help to address.
Addressing,
so exactly. Yeah. So it's something that you can help to address, and it is it's a very important foundational element for retail brands now. For us, it's similar in terms of things like single customer view and CDP. Yeah. But if if a brand says, but we can't do this because we haven't got a single customer view, it's like, okay, fine, that's probably going to take you at least a year, 18 months possibly, to try and solve that. 6 months if you're lucky. But actually in that period of time, there's things you can still do that will help you to move a step forward and to provide a better customer experience without, and also it's, because you'll generate additional sales.
Yeah, we keep banging into these same sort of messages. It's about having a vision. It doesn't matter if you're taking incremental steps to get there, but take some steps and know where you're going, type of thing.
Yeah, the approach to implementation of any change has got to be very different from previously. You can't wait 6 months, because if you wait 6 months, all that happens is, or even
World
longer,
changes.
Yeah, well, what happens is you implement something that was suitable for 6 months ago.
Yeah, no.
But retail's always changing, isn't it?
You've got to have that flexibility to kind of innovate around the edge,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that's the piece that we're trying to solve, both of us, in terms of in different ways. And I think often, it's trying to not be paralysed by this, by what, from a legacy perspective, in terms, because you don't need to rip everything and replace. It is very much, I think I was there when I was at Jaeger, where like systems that were creaking and basically needed to reinvent everything. But actually, it was a question of what's working, what's not working. How do you approach that? And as you said, it constantly evolves. So the ability to be able to really innovate, at the edge to deliver some value add and some
and acknowledge that edge is going to change and be flexible and fluid.
Which is really key.
When you just go back to your channels and that edge fluidity, just a point you mentioned earlier, what are you seeing? What's the most favourite method of communication these days, for example? What are customers using? And does that, I think it does, vary greatly geographically, potentially?
Yeah, hugely. So, it's emails, email is still not dead from a communication method. So we still, a lot of our brands still generate, a really decent amount of revenue from email communications, which are personalised, so not generic. But WhatsApp is huge, but being able to use that to sort of communicate, it's kind of more immediate, more sort of like, and it's very much in EMEA. More so than in the US. US is SMS and MMS. It's really strange, but it is still, WhatsApp is not used as much in the US as it is in Europe and other regions. And then, when you go broader, then obviously there are lots of different WeChats and, Line in Japan, and then you've got Kakao in Korea, and different elements.
Might have heard that one. Okay.
So no, and I think it's about the you've got to be able to support what the customer is, obviously what the customer wants to use, and being able to have that kind of immediate communication
and bring those together in some sort of a harmony view of what's going on.
I suppose I'd say the best form of communications that you're in store, that your solution will promote speech.
I want to make a pen and quill joke about this.
Speech, right? Because it absolutely enables the person in the shop to actually have something to say, meaningful to the customer. So that's the vital thing. Because nowadays you walk into a store, and the chances are a lot of stores, people don't speak to you at all unless you buy something. And it's such
What do you think store environment wise works best? I do ponder the Apple sort of model now and again. The fact I have to think about where to queue or how to find somebody to serve me. I mean,
but you shouldn't do, because they still meet.
Now they've got somebody at the door telling you
Yeah.
where to go, and I think, is that an extra layer that I don't need? Just say, why isn't there just somebody that says, come here?
But you can browse, can't you? But you could,
No, I buy something.
you can wander around, but you still kind of like, whenever I go in, or recently my phone just stopped working, so I had to go and sort it out within hours, obviously.
Disaster,
And it literally, I could book an appointment online, which was painful, because I went through chat for ages and then said, look, I just want to speak to a person, please. I just need to sort my phone out. I need to speak to a person. I need to book an appointment at, Covent Garden
now,
and go in and sort it out. And again, there it was great, and I then got to speak to a person, and everything was sorted, and I purchased a new phone. However, and I think is that balance of, where does something like chat or, a video call or something help, in terms of to have that direct conversation, where does that work versus then actually you actually physically want to have a proper conversation with someone and trying to get that right. And I think that's
you do
where
find yourself working out a way of getting past the bot, don't you? Or working out a way past option 4 that you know is going to cut you off and say use the website. You end up spending more time working out how to talk to a human.
And I think often when we have a problem or we have something that we want to solve, sometimes an email can, like just a quick email or a chat can sort it. But then other times you get frustrated and then you really want to speak to somebody.
Well, the best way of speaking to somebody, I found since I had a problem just before Christmas over an item of furniture, and I tried using the chat bot. I tried waiting online, being told continually for at least 45 minutes that my call was important to them, and it still didn't get through. The only solution I actually came to was I called them out on Twitter. And the sad thing is, I called them out on Twitter, and within 25 minutes, the problem was resolved. And it's because I called them out on Twitter, and you shouldn't need to do that, should you?
No.
Yeah, that's not. That's a great service. It's not. It's really poor service, because that is the last line of resort.
You shouldn't have it in the first place.
No, of course it shouldn't. There shouldn't have been a problem. But equally, if there are always problems, because it's just life. That nothing ever runs perfectly. Things don't always run perfectly. So nothing runs perfectly, because obviously sometimes it does. But things don't always run perfectly. So therefore, you do need to have a route to get something resolved.
That's the equivalent of shouting, isn't it?
It is.
Really,
it's
basically.
exactly that. That's exactly right. It's like going into the store.
Email.
It's like when I spent some time working in the store, and you get a customer who'd come in and they're completely utterly. This was before technology was a thing. I think we even had ECRs then, before EPOS, and a customer would come in and completely lose the plot. And you think, God, the person is a nutter. And then actually you think, you know what, they have a point. And they got what they wanted. They wanted a refund, they got a refund, because at the end of the day we just wanted them to leave the store. And sadly that's not good customer service.
No, it's not ideal.
So one thing that we to sort of bring this to a close, and one thing that we can certainly do, but it's not just a case of put technology in there. There's got to be an alignment of what the retailer has as their customer service philosophy. But technology can certainly go a long way to supporting the in-store experience, to make stores more relevant, and a really valuable element of the selling, the whole selling process in the business.
If it's supported by process, and that process makes the content of that technology accurate and that sort of thing. You can't just automate rubbish. You've got to make
No, absolutely. And equally, you mentioned, I said we're winding up, just one other point. You mentioned, Primark. I'm not picking out Primark, but they're those sort of almost self-service environments where you don't necessarily want somebody sort of walking around saying if you're okay all the time, because it's not necessary. But if Primark and retailers like that have a view about what their customer service is, then they're bringing technology to support that view, rather than bringing something that might be more aligned to a Paul Smith store or a Harvey Nichols.
I think where things like I do see some changing, and again it comes back to the role of the store. But if you can enable your store associates to provide that really high level of after sales care, then that's a really good example of where you can really have a person there, a human, helping to solve that problem, from a returns perspective, or whether it's, like a service issue or a product issue, because, ultimately they're an extension. They should be. You don't always have to go to customer service to sort something out. You should be able to talk to somebody online or talk to somebody in the store.
Retailers don't have customer service.
No, they're phased out. They use the floor space for everything else.
Exactly.
But you're right. I think, and to use Alan's hated word, they have to be empowered to be able to do stuff.
Well, they have to have that information. They have to have that. If you've already raised a case or something with customer services, but if the store person can't see that, then how, I've got a repair being made and the store people don't know what's happening with it. I've, just popped in to get an update. So again, it's just about how you communicate and how you use that broader
if it's
piece.
not on the shop floor, we haven't got it. It's back to that sort of world, isn't it? What does 2023 hold in store for proximity, Cathy, to wind up finally?
Well, Well, no, I think it's actually a really exciting year in lots of ways. You know, obviously it's a challenging year. Everyone says it's going to be a challenging year. But I think in terms when there are times of challenge, it's about really trying to understand how you can make a difference. And I think that's where, you know, we're really looking at how we can focus on the value add that we provide, not just from a technology perspective, but also from our broader experience. You know, a lot of, like you, a lot of our team members will all come from retail. We really get retail and understand retail. We're really there to help brands, you know, differentiate and to do well. So we're really focusing on
at the
that
same time
value
as that
add.
bringing that sort of best practice mentality.
Absolutely.
So are you going to NRF this year?
I'm actually, for the first time for ages, my team are there. The team are there.
You've delegated.
Yeah, no,
karaoke.
I actually have my lovely sister decided that she wanted to get married on the 14th of January. So I'm off to France for a family wedding. I'm afraid that's taken precedent.
Wouldn't they move
over going
NRF for you so that you could do the two? I mean, did they?
And it was just going to be too difficult to get there and back, and with other priorities. So I reluctantly decided not to go and do my karaoke singing.
I wasn't going to go down the karaoke route again. Not once we're recording. I was going to ask you out off what song you were going to sing, but no, you brought it up. No, I was going to ask you what technology you thought you were looking forward to seeing. Anything you thought you might see this year, because sometimes it's all quite samey.
Well, that's probably a whole new podcast, isn't it? It is quite samey. So
we're not going either. So
no. Next year, save up our pennies.
Yeah, we're coming to your sister's wedding and saying you're going to attempt to put two more places on the guest list.
She's singing now.
Right,
perfect.
Thanks very much, Cathy. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Lovely,
Bye.
thanks.